In this tutorial, we're going to look at loops with counters. They're still while loops, but they have an added counter inside to help us prevent creating infinite while loops. So let's go to the Marin Maker page and go to the starter code loops with counters. Click on it. When it opens up, fork it so that you have a copy of it in your account. So counters are going to be really useful when they're combined with loops, and they can prevent the creation of infinite loops. There are two things that you have to remember when using a counter. It must be created and assigned a start value outside of the loop, and then inside the loop, you have to increment or decrement it each time the code runs. Otherwise, the counter is useless. So let's look at some code here under Investigate and Modify. We're going to add comments to explain what the counter variable is used for and what the plus equals 1 does. Then we're going to add a comment that explains what the condition checks for. And then we'll do some adding of code. So let's look at the first comment that it's asking us to explain. The counter variable, what it's used for. So the counter variable here, I see it twice. It's outside the loop and inside the loop. And it's initially set to 1. So variable initial value set to 1. And then the while loop, and actually it's 3 times, right? It's in the condition of the while loop and inside the while loop. So let's just look at the inside though, where it says counter plus equals 1. Well, if you remember from our math tutorial that the plus equals adds and reassigns the new value to a variable. So the counter variable here that started as 1 is getting reassigned as its current value, which was 1 on the outside, 1 plus 1. So now counter equals 2. So then when the code gets run again, initially it was 1. 1 is less than 5. But then when this code gets run, so adding 1 to counter value. So it will continue to add, so then it would be 2. So then counter becomes 2, and 2 is still less than 5. So it would still print this line, and it would run again and say counter plus equals 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 is now counter, and it would go on like that until counter was not less than 5. So the condition here, this is the condition, it's after the while loop, it's our comparison. That condition is checking if counter value is less than 5. And if it is, it will continue to do the code inside of it. Now let's go on to the third part. It wanted us to add a line inside the code loop that outputs the counter variable every time the loop runs. Okay, so I'm going to put that before we add to the counter because that would be the new value. So I'm going to put here print counter. And then we'll look at what happens each time we run the code. And then we can add a line of code after the loop that outputs the message the loop has finished. So if I hit enter, I'm still inside the loop because I'm indented. So if I backspace, I'm outside the loop. We can print the loop has finished. Okay, so let's run this code, and let me comment out the code underneath it. So let's run this, and while we're running it, we're going to pay attention to what is happening inside the loop each time it repeats. So the first time the counter went inside and the loop, the counter was 1 because that was the initial value. So 1 was less than 5, so it printed the counter, which is 1, and then it printed this code is inside the loop. It added to the counter, and we got 2, and 2 is less than 5, so it went back inside and it printed the value, which is now 2, and then it printed the message, and it added again, so 3, prints the message, adds, we get 4. 4 is still less than 5, so we go inside and we print 4, we print the message, then we add 4 plus 1 is 5. Now 5 is not less than 5, so the code stopped and it skipped. It didn't go inside the loop, and instead it went on and printed the loop has finished. Now let's move on to the modify. I will uncomment that code, and the above code that we just created, I will comment out. So the modify here is asking us to add a line of code to the loop that subtracts 1 from the counter every time the loop runs. So above we were adding with the plus equals. So if we want to subtract, if I remember, we're going to do the minus equals 1. So let's do that. Counter minus equals 1. Okay, so we added that every time the loop is run that's inside the loop. Add a line of code after the loop that outputs blast off. So outside of the loop, backspace it, print blast off. And there's an extra challenge here. We could adapt the code so that the user has to input the start value of the counter variable. Let's see what happens before we do the challenge. So 10, 9, 8, all the way down to 1, and then we hit blast off. So I don't see 0 printed because we want to say that, well, counter is greater than 0. But maybe we do want to see 0. So maybe I want it greater than or equal to 0. And then if we want to do that added bonus instead of 10, we could input, have it be an integer because we need to do math with it, and input set a starting countdown number. Okay, let's run that and see what happens. So let's say we just want to count down from 6. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 0, 1, blast off. There's 1, 0, blast off. So we do get that 0 there because we've added the equals. Again, if you don't want it and you just want after 1 to blast off, that's fine. Yeah, our modification works. So we'll go ahead and comment that out and go down to the create. And this wants us to write a program that uses a loop to output the 7 times table up to 12. So 12 times 7. So they're saying use the counter variable and combine it with what we've learned about math with variables. Output the multiplied number as a part of a sequence. 1 times 7 is 7. Okay. So this, we have to think about math, and we have to think about the number 7 that we're going to be doing some math with. So let's create that. We know that we need a variable that's going to house the number that we're going to output the multiplication table. So let's do 7. And then we can use the counter as to go up to 12. So we can start it at 1. And then we can say while counter, because we only want it to go to 12, so is less than or equal to 12. Let's do some math here. I think we might need a result. So we're going to say result equals 0 just to get it started. Inside the loop, remember it's a tab inside. So let's do result equals num times counter. And I might not need the result initiated beforehand, but I'm going to keep it just in case. So we're going to, that's going to give us the result, and we're going to print, what are we going to print? We're going to print the counter times number is result. Okay. And I know I'm using single and double quotes. That shouldn't matter. I'm using commas, so I don't have to worry about concatenation. And these are all numbers, and I don't want to, I could turn them into strings, but commas will work just fine. So I want to repeat that, and I think that will work. So, oh, and we have to repeat the counter, right? So counter plus equals 1 each time. Let's see if this will give me 7 times 12, all the way, 7 times 1 and all the way to 12. Oh, hey, look at that. 1 times 7, 2 times 7, 3, 4, all the way to 12. And it did my math. So there's our program, and it's just thinking through the problem and thinking what we want as our output. Our output was that we wanted a result of some math and printing that out, and not forgetting to count each time. If you liked this, and you're looking for more of a challenge, then you should check out the Marin Maker page. Let's go back. You should check out the calculator challenge. The calculator challenge is to program a calculator that just does the simple math of addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, getting that information from the user. So you'll not only need to use a while loop, but you also might need to combine your condition statements, if, then, else. This is certainly a challenge, and we'll have a solution up later.